Hi everyone and welcome back to the Code Shop channel. Payroll can feel complicated at first, especially when you hear terms like structure types, salary rules, or inputs. But once you see how these pieces connect, it actually becomes very logical. In today's video, we're diving into how employee salaries are structured and calculated. Let's break it down step by step using what Odoo already gives us out of the box. In Odoo, an employee's salary is calculated using five main building blocks: structure types, structures, salary rules, rule parameters, and other inputs. You can think of this like layers. At the top, we have the structure type. Inside that structure type, we have one or more salary structures. And inside each structure, we have salary rules that actually calculate amounts on the payslip. When Odoo generates a payslip, it looks at the employee's contract, checks the assigned structure type, applies the correct structure, evaluates all the rules, and combines that with work time from work entries. Once you see this flow, everything else falls into place. Let's start from the top, the structure types. By default, Odoo comes with two generic ones. The employee structure type is typically used for salaried employees. That's why its default wage type is fixed wage, and it's usually paid monthly. The worker structure type, on the other hand, is designed for hourly employees and uses an hourly wage. The United States employee structure type was preconfigured by Odoo when we selected the United States localization. Its structure and rules are specific to the United States regulations. In this video, we're focusing on the employee structure type, because that's what most companies use for standard salary stuff. The structure type defines the general payroll behavior for a group of employees. This is where we decide things like how often employees are paid, whether they are salaried or hourly, which working hours apply, and which salary structure is used by default. In this case, the scheduled pay is set to monthly, which means Odoo will generate payslips once per month. Another important field here is the work entry type. By default, it's set to attendance. So Odoo expects regular work days and uses those entries when calculating payslips. Other entries like overtime or time off are still tracked separately, but attendance is the baseline for salary computation. So in short, the structure type sets the rules of the game. Now that we understand the big picture, let's move one level deeper and look at the salary structures that actually calculate the payslip amounts. The employee structure type includes two structures: regular pay and end of year bonus. This is a great example of how structure types work. The employee structure type acts as a container, and inside it, we define different salary situations. Regular monthly salary is handled by regular pay, but bonuses are handled separately using a different structure. Now let's take a look at the regular pay salary structure. This structure defines how a standard monthly salary is calculated for employees. Everything we see here directly affects what ends up on the payslip. You'll notice this structure is linked to the employee structure type. The use workday lines option is enabled, so Odoo takes attendance, leaves, and absence into account when computing the salary. The pay schedule here is monthly, and the salary journal defines where payroll entries are posted in accounting. The real logic of this structure lives in the salary rules below, so that's where we'll focus next. Each line you see here represents a salary rule. Salary rules define how individual components of the salary are calculated and shown on the payslip. Things like basic salary, allowances, or deductions. Every rule belongs to a category, such as basic or allowance, and has a code that Odoo uses internally during payroll computation. One important concept to understand is that salary rules are processed in sequence. Odoo starts from the top, calculates each rule one by one, and can reuse results from earlier rules when needed. This sequential processing is what allows you to build very flexible salary logic. without having to write complex code. Below that, we have the condition section. In many basic rules, the condition is simply set to always true, meaning the rule will always apply whenever this structure is used. Then we move to computation. This is where Odoo decides how the amount is calculated. The calculation can be a fixed amount, a percentage based on another input, or calculated using Python logic. Most default salary rules are already correctly configured, so in most cases, you won't need to change anything here, unless you have a very specific requirement. There is also an accounting tab where we can define debit and credit accounts. This is what allows payroll entries to automatically flow into the accounting app once payslips are posted. Sometimes a payslip needs extra information that doesn't come from attendance or contracts. That's where other input types come in. These are used for things like bonuses, commissions, reimbursements, or one time deductions. When creating a payslip, these inputs can be added manually and then picked up by the relevant salary rules during computation. So, to summarize the flow, an employee has a contract. That contract uses a specific structure type. Within that structure type, Odoo applies a structure, like regular pay. The structure runs through its salary rules, using work entries, parameters, and other inputs. And finally, Odoo generates a complete and accurate payslip. Once you understand this hierarchy, payroll configuration becomes much less intimidating. And that's it for today's video. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more Odoo tips and tutorials. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.